Hey guys, tonight we descend into the one place you've been avoiding, the echo chamber inside your own mind, where her voice still whispers, still warns, still weighs every move you make. You might be lying in bed right now, lights low, pretending the day is done. But in here, inside the soft folds of your psyche, the story is far from over. Maybe you haven't spoken to her in years. Maybe she's gone. Maybe she was never truly there. But somehow she still shows up. Her silence, her approval, her disapproval, tangled in your decisions, in your self-talk, in your dreams. And here's the reality check. You probably won't survive this story unchanged, because this isn't about her. It's about the mother in your mind, the one you still obey. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is where you are. Allow the noise to fade, the stillness to bloom, and together we'll begin. You didn't hear her voice, not at first, not directly. It was subtler than sound, more like a pattern that kept repeating. You learned to predict her moods before she had them. You walked on eggshells before there was ever a crack. You knew what tone meant danger, what silence meant punishment. You learned that love was not a constant. It was conditional, transactional, earned. So you adapted. And now, years later, long after the original source is gone or distant or softened by time, the imprint remains. You might think you're making your own choices, but some of those decisions still carry her logic. You might think that inner voice, the one that criticizes you, corrects you, keeps you small, is your voice. But if you listen more closely, you'll hear the inflection, the vocabulary, the judgment wrapped in care, the approval laced with fear. It wasn't born in you. It was planted. That's the thing about the mother complex. Jung didn't call it a memory, he called it a structure, a psychic formation so foundational, it feels like self. It lives beneath your habits, your preferences, even your dreams. You carry her not because you want to, you carry her because you had to. As a child, you needed her to survive. And survival requires one thing above all else, loyalty. And loyalty, when unconscious, becomes the cage. Even now, when you're miles away, geographically or emotionally, you might still check in with her without knowing it. Before you speak up, there's a pause, a calculation. Will this be too much, too loud, too honest? You filter yourself through her eyes. You shrink before you even stand. And that shrinkage, that's not just fear, that's memory in disguise. Her rules live in your bones, not written out, but etched in moments. Don't make her sad. Don't ask for more. Don't be the reason she breaks. And those moments became principles, the kind you now enforce on yourself. You don't celebrate wins because celebration wasn't safe. You don't rest because rest meant laziness. You say, I'm fine, even when you're unraveling, because expressing need once made things worse, not better. The echo isn't just mental, it's emotional, somatic. You might feel it as tension in your chest when you try to set a boundary, as nausea when you think about disappointing someone, as exhaustion after being around people who demand too much. The mother within doesn't just speak, she governs. Quietly, constantly, completely. You tell yourself you're grown, you tell yourself you've moved on. But the proof is in the patterns, and if you keep circling the same conflicts, sabotaging the same relationships, hating the same parts of yourself, you haven't moved on. You've just internalized her voice. But here's the twist. It's not about blaming her. It's about seeing clearly. She was shaped too. She inherited silence, pressure, fear. She carried her own invisible leash. Maybe she never looked up long enough to question it. But you're here, you're listening, which means the chain can stop with you. Still, don't expect it to let go easily. The mother complex is sticky. It disguises itself as love, as protection, as tradition. It tells you you're selfish for wanting more, ungrateful for needing space, disloyal for becoming your own person. And the cruelest part, you believe it. You hear that voice and you think it's your conscience, but it's not. It's conditioning. The good news? Conditioning can be undone, but not by running, not by pretending, only by turning toward the voice, naming it, facing it, asking, who taught me this? Who benefits when I shrink? Who suffers when I don't? And here's what's hardest. That voice, the one you obey, it won't vanish with insight. It doesn't care that you know better. It cares that you still feel afraid. So you'll have to do more than think. You'll have to feel. Rage, grieve, shake, and eventually, speak. In your real voice, the one that was buried beneath the rules, beneath the fear, beneath the echo. So tonight, as you lie here, letting your breath slow and your defenses melt, I ask you this: what rules are you still following that were never yours to begin with? Who are you trying to please, protect, or resurrect through your perfection, your silence, your suffering? The voice you still obey is not your enemy, but it is your threshold. And until you cross it, the life you're craving will always feel one step away. You were hungry before you ever knew the word for it, not for food, not even for touch, but for something subtler: presence, warmth, a gaze that saw you without turning you into a task or a threat or a mirror for her pain. That hunger didn't start with your choices. It started with hers, or more precisely, with what she didn't have to give. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she was consumed by her own mother's voice. Maybe she thought silence was safety, distance was discipline, and shame was love in disguise. Whatever the reason, something you needed wasn't there. And instead of questioning that absence, you filled it with striving, with pleasing, with pretending not to need anything at all. That's the inherited hunger, a craving that's not yours but lives in you. You learned early that love had rules. It required performance, clean rooms, good grades, quiet obedience. Or maybe it required the opposite: chaos, rebellion, becoming her confidant, her therapist, her reason to stay alive. Either way, you learned to earn what should have been given freely. And now, you're still earning. You hustle for validation. You overfunction in relationships. You stay in situations that drain you because somewhere deep inside, you believe that pain is the price of being loved. You don't call it hunger anymore. You call it ambition, work ethic, responsibility. But underneath those adult labels, the child is still waiting, still hoping that this time, if you just do enough, she'll finally see you. But she won't. Not because she's cruel, because she's not here. And even if she is, she's not the version you carry in your mind. That version isn't real. It's an imprint, a symbol, a shadow. You see, Jung understood that the mother complex isn't just memory, it's myth. You don't remember her as she was. You remember how she made you feel, and those feelings became a story, a pattern, a prison. She might have done her best, she might have been kind, but if her kindness was inconsistent, if her love had limits, you learned to live with less. And now you normalize that in every room you enter. You expect crumbs. You celebrate scraps. You build thrones for people who give you fragments and call it intimacy. And still, the hunger doesn't leave, because you're not feeding it with what it actually needs. You're chasing replicas, chasing people who resemble her emotional texture, elusive, distant, critical, preoccupied. Because some part of you believes that if you can finally get them to stay, to choose you, to approve of you, it'll rewrite what happened back then. But that's not healing, that's reenactment. That's the unconscious trying to repair itself through repetition. And it doesn't work, not really. Because no matter how perfect you are, how selfless, how shiny and palatable, the ache remains. It remains because it wasn't about what you did, it was about what you never received. And the wound didn't come from your failure, it came from your innocence being met with absence. Now the hunger shape shifts. Sometimes it shows up as anxiety, low grade, always there, tight in your chest dread. Sometimes it's perfectionism, this compulsive need to prove your worth through results. Sometimes it's overgiving, being the one who always says yes, who never sets boundaries, who always carries the emotional weight. Sometimes it's numbness, a deep disconnection from your own needs, because feeling them only reminds you that they were once unsafe to have. This hunger doesn't mean you're broken. It means you adapted. You found ways to survive the gap. But now, those adaptations are costing you. They're keeping you in cycles, emotional loops where you choose partners who neglect you, bosses who undervalue you, friends who don't really see you. Because some part of you equates neglect with normal, distance with safety. And love still feels suspicious. What if it's real? What if it stays? What if it doesn't need you to shrink? These questions are terrifying when you've been starving. When you've taught yourself to live on so little, abundance feels like a trick. You wait for the catch, you sabotage the good. You walk away from peace because chaos is familiar, and familiarity feels like home, even when it hurts. But here's the invitation. What if you could feed yourself differently? Not with perfection, not with performance, but with presence. What if the love you keep chasing was never meant to be outsourced? What if she couldn't give it not because you weren't worthy, but because no one ever gave it to her? This isn't about excusing harm, it's about interrupting inheritance. You inherited her hunger, but you don't have to pass it on. You can stop, you can turn inward, you can ask that hunger what it really wants. And when it answers, when it says safety, softness, permission to be seen, you can give it that. Not all at once, but slowly, consistently, tenderly. You don't heal inherited hunger by starving it. You heal it by feeding it something new. Like saying no when you mean no. Like resting when you're tired. Like trusting someone enough to let them see your mess. Like not abandoning yourself to avoid being abandoned. And in time you'll notice something strange. The ache begins to soften. The chasing slows down. The striving becomes a whisper instead of a scream. Not because you fixed yourself, but because you stopped seeing yourself as broken. The hunger doesn't define you. It reminds you. It shows you where the wound lives, where the child still waits, where the story is asking to be rewritten, and you can rewrite it. You must, because no one else is coming to feed that part of you. That's your work now, not as a punishment, but as a promise. The promise that you will not abandon yourself again. Not for her, not for anyone, not ever. The voice in your head is so familiar you rarely question it. It keeps you in check. It scolds you when you fall behind. It whispers warnings when you try to speak up, step out, stretch beyond your comfort zone. You've probably called it your conscience, your rational mind, your inner critic. But what if it's not yours at all? What if the cadence, the caution, the content of that voice belongs to her? The mother behind your voice isn't the one who spoke kindly when things were calm. It's the one who broke you down in silence, the one who sighed instead of spoke, who flinched instead of comforted, who turned away when you needed her gaze the most. Her voice didn't have to be loud to live inside you. It had to be consistent. It had to be emotional truth, not verbal noise. Because a child doesn't need words to learn who they are. They need attunement. And when they don't get it, the story they write about themselves becomes internal law. You wrote those laws early. Don't be too much. Don't ask questions. Don't cry unless it's convenient. Don't ever make her the reason something goes wrong. And now, decades later, you still live by those laws, even though the courtroom is empty and the judge has long left the bench. This is how the mother complex survives, not through presence, through programming, through messages encoded in your nervous system. When you hear that inner voice say, "Why would they love you?" or "You're not doing enough," or "Keep quiet or you'll ruin everything," that's not you. That's her ghost, her fear, her shame, her scarcity. Passed down like sacred scripture and memorized by your bones. You don't even realize you're obeying. You call it modesty, you call it realism. You say you're just being practical. But underneath those words is the unspoken rule. Stay small, stay good, stay invisible enough to be acceptable, but not so invisible that they forget to need you. Walk the line, be useful, be needed, but never be too free. Because freedom means danger. Freedom means difference. And difference was never safe. That voice, hers, isn't always cruel. Sometimes it sounds like protection, like logic, like care. That's what makes it harder to question. It says, "Are you sure you want to share that? What if they think you're dramatic?" Or, "It's not that bad. Other people have it worse." Or, "Just let it go. It's not worth the fight." And it all sounds so reasonable. But what it really says is, don't trust yourself. Don't believe your own experience. Don't make waves. She becomes your gatekeeper. You censor yourself to protect her feelings. You second-guess your joy to keep her from being threatened. You delay your dreams because her voice doesn't understand risk unless it guarantees control. But here's what Jung knew. If that voice isn't made conscious, you'll confuse it with your identity. You'll say, "I'm just anxious," or "I'm just not a risk taker," or "I've always struggled with confidence," and you'll never realize those aren't traits. They're trauma responses. They're the echoes of a childhood shaped by emotional enmeshment or neglect. Maybe she said she loved you every day. Maybe she never raised her voice. That doesn't mean the message landed. Because love is not what's said, it's what's felt. And if what you felt was pressure, fear, confusion, or invisibility, that's the language your psyche learned. So now you speak it fluently. You downplay your wins, you hide your needs, You apologize before you've done anything wrong. You don't call it obedience, you call it humility. You think it makes you kind. But it's not kindness. It's a kind of imprisonment. Because the voice you obey is not rooted in your wholeness. It's rooted in your conditioning, and it shows up in the smallest ways. You want to try something new, a creative project, a boundary, a bold ask, and immediately the voice rises. Who do you think you are? You want to say no to a plan, a person, a dynamic that drains you. And the voice says, they'll be disappointed, you're being selfish. You want to rest, to do nothing, to simply exist without proving your worth. And the voice whispers, lazy, irresponsible, you'll fall behind. That voice is not your guide, it's your guard. It was installed to keep you safe in an unsafe emotional environment. But now it's keeping you small in a world that's finally ready to hold you. But don't rush to silence it. Jung never taught repression. He taught integration. The voice isn't evil, it's afraid. It believes the world will devour you if you step out of line, because that's what her world taught her, and her mother's world before that. So when you hear it next, when it rises like a tide before you do something brave, don't fight it. Speak to it. Acknowledge it. Say, I hear you. I know you're trying to protect me, but I'm not a child anymore, and I don't need that kind of protection. That's where freedom begins. Not in silencing the voice, but in seeing through it. In recognizing that the volume of a fear doesn't determine its truth. In remembering that your nervous system is wired to avoid what once hurt you, not what currently serves you. The mother behind your voice was once the mother behind hers. This isn't just personal, it's ancestral, archetypal. And when you question it, when you face it, when you choose not to obey, it's not just you who's healing. It's a whole lineage. You were never meant to carry her voice forever. You were meant to develop your own. So the next time you hear that whisper, pause, breathe, ask whose voice is this really? What does it want to protect? What does it fear will happen if I live freely? And then choose anyway, speak anyway, shine anyway, because the voice you obey doesn't own you. It raised you. But now you raise yourself. You wear it like air, this guilt that doesn't belong to you. This fear that isn't yours. This weight that settled on your shoulders before you even had the words to name it. It's invisible, but it governs you. It speaks not in shouts, but in constraints. And the worst part? You think it's just part of being a good person, bound by the invisible. That's what this is. A contract you never signed, but somehow still uphold. A spell cast so early and so quietly that now, when you feel the urge to break it, you assume you're the one doing something wrong. You make yourself small in moments that call for bigness. You over-explain when you dare to say no. You check in with everyone else's emotions before you even name your own. And beneath it all, the message is the same. You are responsible for how others feel. Especially her. Maybe she said it outright, maybe she didn't have to, maybe her moods told the story. Maybe her sorrow was louder than any punishment could have been. You learn to scan her, to anticipate her pain, to adjust your joy, your curiosity, your authenticity, to protect her. And that adaptation, it became the rhythm of your emotional life. Jung called it the unconscious loyalty to the mother. Not to her as a person, but to the complex, to the archetype, to the emotional myth that told you, if you thrive, she suffers. If you grow, she is left behind. If you become yourself, you are abandoning her. And so you didn't. Not really. Maybe you moved out, maybe you moved on. But inside, you're still circling her gravity, still tethered to her sorrow, still checking in with her ghost before you make a move. This isn't your fault. This is generational patterning, psychic inheritance. You learned that love meant sacrifice, that safety meant silence, that separation meant betrayal. So now, even when you feel the call to rise, to speak, to leave, to create something radically your own, you freeze. You hesitate, and the leash pulls taut. Because to claim your autonomy feels like a kind of death, not just of the relationship but of your identity. Who are you if you're not her caretaker, her emotional regulator, her second chance? This is the trap of enmeshment, the boundaryless bond, the illusion that love means fusion. And the tragedy is, it's all built on fear. Fear that she'll break if you step away. Fear that you'll shatter if she stops loving you. Fear that disconnection is the same as destruction. But it's not, it never was. True connection includes space. True love allows difference. True growth honors both your roots and your wings. But when the mother complex is unexamined, you don't know that. You only know the leash, you only know the rules. And even if she never spoke them, you live them, still. So now you overfunction in every room you walk into. You apologize for taking up space. You absorb everyone else's stress and call it empathy. You defer, delay, diminish yourself, and you call it love. But it's not love. It's survival. It's habit. It's guilt dressed up as care. Jung knew this guilt well. He saw it as archetypal, a primordial fear that to separate is to be cast out. To say, I choose me, is to betray the very source of life. That fear is not rational. It's ancient. It lives in your nervous system, not your calendar. And so you obey it. You obey it in your tone of voice, in the way you phrase requests as favors, in the way you dilute your opinions so they won't ripple too far. But what if you didn't? What if the leash is made of memory, not morality? What if the shame you feel when you say no is a map, not a mistake? Because every time you betray yourself to stay close to someone else, especially her, you reinforce the wound. The one that says you're only lovable when you're useful, only worthy when you're agreeable, only safe when you're silent, and you're not a child anymore. You can step out of that myth. You do not owe your soul to the one who shaped your skin. You do not have to carry pain to prove your love. You do not have to shrink so she can feel tall. That's the old way, the inherited story, the invisible contract. But you're here to break it, not with violence, with vision, not with rebellion, with clarity. You can love someone and still say no. You can honor their pain without becoming its container. You can carry the lessons and leave the leash. Because the guilt you feel is not truth, it's residue. It's the echo of a system that taught you to disappear in order to belong. But your belonging doesn't require disappearance. Your voice doesn't require apology. Your path doesn't need permission. And yes, the fear will rise. It will whisper, you're selfish, you're ungrateful, you're leaving her behind. Let it whisper. You don't need to argue, just walk. Walk toward your own center, your own values, your own vision of a life that isn't filtered through her gaze. This is the unbinding, the slow, sacred act of saying, I love you, but I don't obey you anymore. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. Because the moment you stop mistaking guilt for love, the leash loosens, and you begin to remember who you were before the rules, before the silence, before the spell. You were not born to be her second chance. You were born to be yourself. It keeps happening, the same dynamic, wrapped in different faces. Lovers who need you to fix them. Bosses who demand your loyalty but never offer respect. Teachers, mentors, spiritual guides who start to feel oddly familiar, not because they resemble your past, but because they replay it. You think you're choosing freely, but somewhere deep down, you are still scanning every room for her. Lovers and bosses and gods. That's how she returns. Not just as your mother, but as anyone who holds power, approval, or authority. Anyone who can mirror the ache, the absence, the hope you never fully let go of. This is projection in its rawest form, one of Jung's deepest insights. What is unhealed becomes a lens. And through that lens, you don't see people as they are. You see who you need them to be. And what you need is for someone to finally stay, to finally see you, to love you in all the ways she couldn't or wouldn't or simply didn't. You're not aware of this, of course. You just feel drawn, magnetized, as if the universe is bringing you home. But it's not home, it's the wound, repackaged as romance, as mentorship, as destiny. You fall hard, not because you're naive, but because your psyche is still hungry, still circling the original loss, still looking for a different ending. So you find someone with her energy, distant, critical, emotionally unpredictable, and you try again. You think maybe this time, if I love hard enough, they'll change, they'll stay, they'll soften, they'll finally choose me. But it's not them you're trying to reach, it's her, always her. That's the cruelty of reenactment. It feels like hope, it feels like healing, until it doesn't. Until you're once again left with the silence, the confusion, the aching question, what's wrong with me? Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you, but something is familiar, and that's why you chose it. Because your nervous system equates familiarity with safety, even if that familiarity is rooted in pain. So the same emotional script plays out over and over. You give too much, you ask for too little, you stay when you should leave. You contort yourself into someone you think they'll love, and when they don't, you blame yourself. You think if you were more patient, less needy, less intense, less you. Maybe it would have worked, but it wouldn't have. Because it was never about you. It was about the pattern, the echo, the unconscious pull toward those who replicate the emotional tone of your mother. This isn't weakness, it's memory. It's the psyche doing what it's wired to do, revisit the unresolved, hoping it can write a new ending. But as Jung warned, unless you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So here you are, calling it fate, calling it chemistry, calling it just the way things go. But it's not fate. It's your inner child, still bargaining, still trying to earn what should have been given without a cost. That's why you tolerate the coldness, the dismissal, the mixed signals. That's why you overperform, overfunction. You're not desperate, you're devoted to a wound, to a myth, to a fantasy that if you just do it right this time, you'll be chosen. But you won't, not by them, because the real choice isn't theirs, it's yours. You have to choose you. You have to stop handing your worth to people who echo your mother's absence. You have to stop believing that your love can heal what's never been your burden to carry. This is not about blaming her. It's about recognizing the spell you're under. The emotional hypnosis that keeps you reaching for the same shape, hoping for a different soul. They're not your mother, they never were. But your psyche makes them her anyway. That's what projection does. It fills in the blanks with ghosts. And then you wonder why the connection feels so deep, so urgent, so loaded. It's because it is, but it's not about now, it's about then. Until you see that, you'll keep recreating the story. The rejection, the abandonment, the guilt, the longing, over and over, with new names, new faces, new disappointments, and you'll call it love. But it's not love, it's the wound. And the wound cannot be healed by reenactment, only by recognition. So start noticing. The way you feel drawn to chaos, the way you pull back from kindness, the way you sabotage steady love because it feels boring or fake. Start asking, does this person actually make me feel safe or just familiar? Are they nurturing me or just mimicking her mood swings? And if you see it, if you feel that tug, that echo, that here we go again sensation, don't shame yourself. Just pause, breathe, step back. This is where the healing begins. In the pause, in the awareness, in the decision to not follow the old script, even when it feels like home. Because home isn't a repetition of pain. Home is what you build when you stop chasing ghosts. And you can build it with someone who sees you without projection, who doesn't need you to fix them, who doesn't punish you for having needs. Someone who doesn't carry her face. But first, you have to let her go. Not the woman, the image, the myth, the expectation that she will return in someone else and finally get it right. She won't. She can't. That's not her role anymore, and it's not theirs. This is your role now, to stop the search, to see the pattern, and to choose differently. Because you are not here to keep reenacting the loss. You are here to heal it. You've done the work, or so you thought. You've read the books, named the patterns, even set a few boundaries. But still, in the quiet moments, something inside you flinches when good things happen. You dim your joy before anyone else can reach for the switch. You sabotage the relationships that feel too nourishing. You delay the dreams that seem too close to coming true. Why? Because some hidden part of you believes you don't deserve them. The wound that edits your worth. That's what's running the show now. Not the external voice of your mother, not even the obvious memories, but the internalized beliefs. The shadow sentences that loop beneath your surface. You're too much. You'll be punished if you shine. If you succeed, you'll be alone. These aren't thoughts. They're laws, quietly governing everything you do. And they don't scream. They whisper. They disguise themselves as humility, as caution, as realism, when in truth, they're just old fears in new clothing. That voice inside you, the one that questions your every win, doubts your every desire, shrinks you down just when you're ready to stand up, was born in a place of emotional survival. Maybe your light once threatened her, your laughter made her eyes narrow, your confidence got punished. Maybe she never said you were too much, but she said it with her absence, with her frown, with the way she turned away when you needed her most. And now, you carry that reaction with you. Not because you're weak, because you're loyal. Because your psyche decided that dimming yourself was safer than losing her completely. So now, you do it to yourself. You self-correct. You make yourself more palatable. You sand down the edges of your truth before you speak it out loud. You fear your power more than your pain, because power led to punishment, or rejection, or silence. That's the mother wound whispering, even now. Don't be too happy. Don't be too free. Don't fly too far, or she'll stop loving you. That whisper becomes your blueprint. You date people who are threatened by your success. You work in jobs that undervalue your brilliance. You offer your heart in places that require your suffering in exchange for staying. It's not just insecurity, it's inherited guilt, the belief that joy is betrayal, that thriving is abandonment, that being whole means being alone. And even when someone shows up, someone who loves you fully, who sees you without demand, you flinch. Because it doesn't match the old language. It doesn't align with the emotional map you've memorized, so you mistrust it, you push it away. Or worse, you become someone else just to keep it, someone smaller, softer, less alive. This is not your fault. This is the wound that edits your worth, not by saying you're worthless, but by making your worth conditional. On behavior, on silence, on never making anyone uncomfortable, especially her. But your healing doesn't depend on her comfort. It depends on your courage. The courage to stay open when your body says to close. The courage to feel joy and not immediately scan the room for danger. The courage to say, I am allowed to have this. I am allowed to feel good. I do not have to earn every breath. Jung understood this deeply. He wrote that the unlived life of the parent becomes the shadow cast upon the child. Her dreams deferred became your responsibility. Her pain became your silence. Her limitations became your ceiling. But those ceilings were never yours. You can outgrow them. You must, because your life is happening now. And if you don't interrupt the wound, it will keep editing the script. It will keep deleting the parts of you that shine too brightly. It will keep inserting self-doubt where there should be sovereignty. It will keep rewriting love as sacrifice and joy as risk. You don't have to live under that edit anymore. Start by noticing. When good things come, does your body brace? Do you look for what might go wrong? Do you downplay your success or share it with a laugh, as if to say, don't worry, I know I don't deserve this either? Those are not random habits, they're survival strategies. But you're not surviving anymore, you're living. And that means choosing to rewrite the code. When the voice says, this is too much, you say, I am allowed to take up space. When it says they'll leave if you show all of yourself, you say, then let them go. When it says, who do you think you are, you say, someone who doesn't shrink to be safe. You rewrite it every time you refuse to betray yourself for someone else's comfort. Every time you choose joy without apology. Every time you say, I'm not sorry for being who I am. The mother wound doesn't disappear overnight. It lives in your nervous system, your reflexes, your posture. But over time, with awareness and gentleness and persistence, you create a new internal map. One where worth isn't earned, where love isn't pain, where your light isn't a liability. And as you walk that path, something begins to shift. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop deferring your needs. You stop editing your essence to keep the peace. You begin to believe, not just intellectually, but somatically, that you are not here to carry her shame, that you are not a reflection of her unmet needs, that your happiness is not a betrayal. It is a birthright. You can shine without guilt. You can succeed without sabotage. You can love without losing yourself. But only if you stop letting the wound write the story. So go ahead, speak louder, laugh harder, rest deeper, love fuller, be the version of you that would have scared her. Not to punish her, but to free yourself. Because that's the healing. Not shrinking in her shadow, but growing in your own light. There's a moment, maybe you felt it, where everything feels still on the surface, but beneath that calm is something else entirely. A tightness in your chest when you're finally alone. A sudden exhaustion when no one is demanding anything from you. A hollow quiet after the high of being needed wears off. That moment, that strange quiet, is the space between the bars of your cage, and the terrifying truth, you built it yourself, brick by brick, thinking it was safety. When comfort becomes the cage, you don't notice right away. It feels familiar, predictable, secure. It doesn't look like suffering. It looks like overscheduling, overgiving, overcontrolling. It looks like staying with the partner who doesn't see you, because at least they stay. Like keeping the job that drains you, because at least it pays. like maintaining the friendship where your needs always come second, because at least you're not alone. Comfort, in this case, is not peace, it's predictability. And predictability is what your nervous system clings to when it's been shaped by a childhood of emotional chaos or invisibility. Jung saw this clearly. The way people will choose a known pain over an unknown joy, simply because the known pain feels survivable. You told yourself you were being wise, grounded, responsible. But deep down, you know something's off. You've contorted your desires to fit inside someone else's frame. You've buried the wild, intuitive, expressive parts of yourself because they didn't match the story you inherited. And you call that maturity, you call that growth. But it's just adaptation. And adaptation, when no longer needed, becomes a trap. You weren't born afraid of expansion. You learned it. Maybe from a mother who shrank her own life until it barely fit her. A woman who gave up dreams and called it duty. Who silenced her pain and called it strength. Who tolerated disrespect and called it love. And maybe you watched her do all that and promised yourself you'd be different. But promises made in fear are hard to keep. So now you repeat her patterns in updated language. You don't say sacrifice, you say compromise. You don't say suppression, you say keeping the peace. But the feeling is the same. You're not free, you're just safe. And safety, when it's bought with self-abandonment, is not safety. It's a prison cell lined with throw pillows and polite smiles. There's a reason your joy scares you. There's a reason your body clenches when you feel seen. There's a reason rest feels indulgent and receiving love feels like a debt you'll have to repay. It's not because you're broken. It's because your definition of home was shaped in a place where aliveness was dangerous. Where being too bright, too loud, too different got you shut out or shut down. So you learned to modulate. You became palatable, digestible, predictable. And you convinced yourself that this version of you was the real one. But it's not. It's the version that kept you safe, and now it keeps you stuck. The cage isn't made of steel, it's made of stories, silent agreements, emotional contracts you signed with her ghost. I'll stay small if it makes you feel better. I won't outshine you. I won't grow past you. I'll carry the pain you never processed, just to keep you close. But here's the truth she never told you. Love doesn't require loyalty to suffering. Love doesn't demand you dim your light. If she needed you to suffer to feel safe, that was her wound, not your job. And yet here you are, tired and kind, helpful and empty, overachieving and undernourished, hoping that if you just hold everything together a little longer, someone will finally come and tell you that you've done enough, that you can rest now. But no one's coming, not in that way, because you are the one who has to walk out of the cage. You are the one who has to reach down and unlock the door. And yes, your body will protest. Your nervous system will scream. Your habits will beg you to go back to what's familiar. Don't. Sit with the discomfort. Sit with the urge to retreat. Sit with the guilt that rises when you take care of yourself first. Because that's the threshold. That's the place where the old identity begins to crumble. And in its place, something new stirs. Not a different performance, but a different presence. The part of you that knows you are not here to be easy, not here to be digestible, not here to be the emotional regulator of everyone else's pain. You are here to be whole. And wholeness is not polite. It does not always feel safe. It does not always earn applause, but it is real, and it is yours. This doesn't mean you burn everything down. It means you start choosing what actually nourishes you, even if it confuses people. It means you speak even when your voice shakes. It means you say no without explanation. It means you risk being misunderstood because the alternative is staying imprisoned by someone else's expectations. You don't have to explain why you're stepping out of the cage. You don't need a reason beyond this, because I want to live. Because the cage is not life, it's rehearsal, it's mimicry, it's a long, slow dying, and you've waited long enough. You are not here to repeat her script. You are not here to edit yourself into someone else's comfort. You are not here to live in the shadows of her unlived life. You are here to create something new. So start, even if it's small, even if it's messy, even if every voice inside you says you're being selfish. Start anyway, because the truth is, you can survive outside the cage, but more than that, outside the cage, you can finally thrive. You don't get to liberation without confrontation. Not with fists, not with blame, with eyes open, with breath steady, with the willingness to see not just what she did or didn't do, but how it lives in you now. This is the moment you stand at the fire, and the fire is her, not the woman, the image, the shadow, the power she holds in your psyche long after the story stopped being true. You were told to forgive, to let it go, to understand that she did her best. And maybe that's true, but understanding doesn't undo what got buried. And until you face it fully, rawly, without filters, you'll be stuck playing her ghost like a loop inside your own life. This is where it gets holy and terrifying, because you're not just remembering, you're seeing clearly for the first time. The ways she turned away, the ways she demanded performance over presence. The ways her love had limits. You've minimized it for so long, haven't you? Said it wasn't that bad, said she meant well, said you were too sensitive. But minimizing doesn't heal, it delays, it distorts. And now you're tired, not just from the pain, but from pretending the pain doesn't exist. So you turn toward her, not to attack, to witness. You let the image surface. Maybe she's crying, maybe she's cold, maybe she's radiant and unreachable. Maybe she's screaming or silent or looking right through you. However she appears, you don't flinch, you don't look away. Because this is the shadow work. This is what Jung meant when he said the unconscious must become conscious, or it will direct your life and you'll call it fate. Her shadow, unexamined, becomes your fate. You have to meet her in the psyche, where she's still alive, where she's still calling the shots from beneath your thoughts. You have to say, I see you, I remember, and I no longer need you to be the source of my worth. She may protest, not with words, but with sensations. The guilt, the shame, the ache. Your body will tell you you're doing something wrong, that you're betraying her, that if you look too long, you'll shatter. You won't. You'll burn, and burning is part of becoming. This is the alchemy Jung spoke of, the transformation that only begins when the illusion dies. The illusion of the perfect mother, the good girl, the obedient child, the one who never made her uncomfortable, the one who made herself small enough to stay close. That child doesn't need to be punished. She needs to be grieved. Because she tried so hard to be lovable in a house that didn't always offer safety. She gave everything, her voice, her softness, her rage, in exchange for love that never fully landed. And now she's waiting for you to come back for her. Not with platitudes, with power. This is the moment you say, I'm not carrying this anymore. I'm not bending my spine to hold your sorrow. I'm not silencing my joy to keep your approval. I'm not living half a life in your name. You stand at the fire and you throw in the scripts, the ones that said you have to fix her, the ones that said your needs are dangerous, the ones that said you are too much, the ones that said your freedom is betrayal. Watch them burn. This isn't about turning her into a villain. It's about refusing to keep her on a throne she never asked for, or one she demanded out of her own fear. Either way, it's not yours to maintain. You do not need her permission to grow. You do not need her understanding to heal. You do not need her blessing to be who you are. You face the mother within, and you realize she was never just her. She was every moment you stayed silent, every time you chose someone else over yourself, every time you called it love, but it tasted like fear. That is the shadow. And it has power because you've never questioned it until now. So you question, you remember, you rage, you cry, you speak, you name what was never named, and the ground begins to shift. The fire doesn't destroy you, it frees you. Because what's burning isn't your essence, it's the costume, the mask, the role, the inherited loyalty that told you survival means suppression. You survived, now you begin. You will lose things in this process, illusions, identities, maybe even connections built on the version of you that was never true. Let them go, because what you gain is sovereignty, space, self. This isn't a quick process, it's a lifelong initiation. And no, she might never understand. She might never say the words you needed. She might still believe you betrayed her by healing without her. Let her. You're not here to make her comfortable. You're here to get free. And in that freedom, something sacred happens. The mother figure loses her grip, not because you hate her, because you no longer need her to be anything other than human. You've taken back the mirror. You've stopped asking it to reflect someone else. You look into your own eyes and you say, I see you, I'm staying, I'm not leaving again. That's what the fire gives you. A place to remember who you were before her wounds tried to write your story. A place to begin writing it yourself. This is the part no one warns you about. After the fire, after the confrontation, after you've stared down the image that ruled your life, the collapse comes. The grief arrives. Not sharp and sudden, but slow, heavy, like smoke settling after the blaze. It fills the spaces where certainty used to live. And you realize, the story you've outgrown was still holding you up. You were leaning on the lie, and now you're free, but untethered. The grief of becoming real is unlike any grief you've known, because it's not just about what happened, it's about what never did. The birthday she forgot, the hug that never came, the moment you needed her eyes to soften, and they didn't. It's the absence that shaped you, the silence that taught you how to disappear, and now that you're awake, you feel it all. The sadness, the rage, the loneliness you buried so deep it became your default. You cry not because of a memory, but because of a truth. You were a child, you needed love, and you learned to live without it. That kind of grief doesn't come with words. It comes with weight. It comes with the ache in your chest when someone sees you and you don't know how to receive it. It comes with the shame you feel when you rest, when you speak, when you ask for something and expect rejection before the sentence is finished. You want to go back, not to her, to not knowing, to the version of you that didn't feel this much, that kept it tidy, that kept it theoretical, but now it's in your body, your bones. You've opened the door and there's no closing it. And this right here is the sacred threshold Jung spoke of. The moment when the ego collapses under the weight of its false identity. The moment the child's strategies stop working. The moment you realize you've been living a life written by someone else's wounds. This isn't weakness. This is rebirth. But rebirth is messy. It's undignified. It's full of snot and silence and sleepless nights. It strips you down, not to punish you, but to prepare you. Because the self you're becoming can't be built on the bones of who you pretended to be. You start to see the echoes everywhere. The way you hold your breath when someone is angry. The way you apologize for being visible. The way you scan for signs that you're too much, too loud, too emotional. You see it, and it hurts. But seeing it is the beginning of not becoming it. There's no quick fix here, no mantra or method that will bypass the grief. You have to feel it, fully, honestly. Let the tears come, let the numbness settle, let the rage rise. You're not breaking down, you're breaking open. And through that opening, something begins to breathe. It's faint at first, fragile, but it's there. A voice that isn't hers, a knowing that isn't wrapped in fear, a presence that doesn't demand perfection to be safe. You, the real you, not the mask, not the protector, not the daughter who never disappointed, not the adult who traded authenticity for acceptance. Just you, raw, unfiltered, grieving, real. And yes, it's lonely here. Because the people who knew the old version of you might not recognize this one. They might try to pull you back into roles, into expectations, into dynamics that no longer fit. Let them. Let them misunderstand. Let them grieve their idea of you, because you're not going back. Not now. Not after this. The grief will ask you to stop. To go quiet. To retreat. That's okay. Let it slow you. Let it wrap around you like a night that has no stars. Because even in the dark, something is forming. You are becoming someone who doesn't need to perform to be loved. Someone who can hold themselves when no one else does. Someone who doesn't confuse guilt with responsibility, love with sacrifice, safety with suppression. This is sacred work. Some days you'll feel strong. Other days you'll feel like you're drowning in your own story. Let both be true. Strength isn't the absence of pain. It's the refusal to abandon yourself in it. You're learning how to stay with yourself, with the grief, with the truth that some things will never be repaired, and you can still be whole. The image of the mother may never soften. She may never change. She may never see you in the way you once needed. But you don't need that now. You need you. You need your presence, your breath, your own eyes meeting you in the mirror with something resembling compassion. And that, more than anything, is the turning point. Because when you can sit in your own pain without numbing it, without shaming it, without handing it to someone else to fix, that's when you know you're real. And real is rare. Real is sacred. Real is what the mother complex tried to prevent. Not because it was evil, because it was afraid. But you're not afraid anymore. You're grieving. And that means you're alive. Keep going. There's a stillness that comes after the grief. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't arrive with trumpets or declarations. It arrives quietly, like breath returning to a body that forgot how to inhale fully. Like your own voice, soft but certain, rising from beneath the rubble. The return to yourself is not dramatic. It is sacred. It is slow. And it is yours. You begin to notice things, subtle shifts. You don't apologize as quickly. You take up space without shrinking afterward. You laugh and don't flinch. You say no and don't drown in guilt. It's not about rebellion. It's not about anger. It's about truth. You are no longer orbiting the image of the mother. You're standing in your own light. This is what Jung called individuation, the emergence of the self from the inherited patterns of the unconscious. Not perfection, not transcendence, just a return, a homecoming. The realization that you are not your pain and you are not her shadow. You no longer wait for her to change so you can heal. You no longer seek her reflection in lovers, leaders, or mentors. You no longer need her to understand or agree or apologize, because you are no longer waiting at her door. The inner mother still speaks sometimes, that old voice, the one that warns you against being too bold, too visible, too free. But now you know how to recognize it, and you don't obey it. You hear it, you thank it for trying to protect you, and then you choose something different. That's the difference now. You have a choice. You stop contorting yourself for acceptance. You stop proving your worth through productivity. You stop treating your body like a battlefield and your emotions like liabilities. You speak, you rest, you stay. Not to please, but to be. It's so simple, it almost feels radical. You walk into rooms and don't scan them for danger. You express needs without bracing for punishment. You make decisions without calling everyone you know for permission. You trust your gut. You say yes because you want to, no because you mean it, and nothing burns down. That's the moment everything changes. You realize the danger was never real. The punishment was never permanent. The leash was never locked. It was fear, ancient, inherited, wrapped in love. And now it's unraveling. You stop rewriting your past to make her look better. You stop justifying her silence, her distance, her control. Not because you hate her, because you love yourself more. You love the child who was told to be grateful for breadcrumbs. You love the teenager who cried in secret. You love the adult who kept showing up with a cracked heart and an open hand. You love them all by telling the truth. She didn't have the tools. She didn't have the awareness. She didn't know how to meet you in the place you needed most. And that's not your burden. That's your history. You carry it, but it does not carry you. This is what it means to reclaim the pen. To stop waiting for closure. To stop craving reconciliation like oxygen. To stop living as a question someone else has to answer. You are the answer. You wake up and you no longer ask, what would she think? You ask, what do I need? What do I want? What do I know is true? The mother complex begins to dissolve, not through hatred or distance, but through clarity, through presence, through becoming so fully yourself that there's no room left for the ghost. And then something softer emerges. Not forgiveness in the way you were taught, not absolution, but understanding, not as a gift to her, as a gift to you. You see her as human, wounded, shaped, scared. You see her not through the eyes of the abandoned child, but through the eyes of the adult who survived. And more than that, thrived. You were never meant to carry her pain. You were never meant to inherit her silence. You were meant to feel, to speak, to live. And now, finally, you are. This is not a finish line. This is a foundation. You build your life not around the wound, but around your wants. You build not from fear, but from alignment. You connect not from need, but from fullness. You live, not as a child begging to be chosen, but as a sovereign soul choosing again and again to belong to yourself. You will still falter. You will still hear echoes, but now you know how to come home. And the voice you obey now, it's yours. So slow everything down now. Let your breath deepen. Let your thoughts float like leaves on a quiet stream. The stories, the shadows, the sorrow, they've been held tonight, seen, spoken. There's nothing left to fix in this moment, nothing left to prove. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are simply becoming. If your heart feels heavy, that's okay. It means you've touched something real, something holy. And that weight, it's what lifts when you choose to stay, when you choose not to run from yourself. Let the past be a place you've walked through, not a place you camp in. Let the voice in your head grow softer. Let your truth grow louder. Let the next breath remind you, you are here and you are whole. Not because she changed, but because you did. You chose to see, to feel, to rise. Now let yourself rest. Let your nervous system know it's safe now, safe to relax, safe to receive, safe to be. Sleep, not as an escape, but as a return to the self you were always meant to be. You're not alone, you're not late, you're already home.